The reserved card had slipped under the salt shaker. Marcus did not see it. He sat down at table 7 at 7:31 on a Tuesday in October because it was the first empty table he saw when he came in from the rain, and he was tired and his feet hurt, and he had been making decisions since 6 in the morning, and this one he made without looking. He put his phone on the table. He took off his jacket. He looked at the menu board above the bar. The kitchen was still open, which was the reason he had stopped here, and not the place 2 blocks closer to the subway. He was going to order the burger and the fries and sit here for 40 minutes and then go home and sleep. The bar was about 2/3 full. A Tuesday crowd, regulars at the bar, a few tables with people who had come in out of the rain like he had, the specific, comfortable noise of a room that is used to itself. He liked it. He had been here twice before. Nobody had talked to him, and he had not talked to anybody, and the food had been good. He caught the eye of the server, a young woman in a black apron, and raised his hand. She nodded and started toward him. Claire saw him at table 7 from behind the bar at 7:33. She saw the construction boots. She saw the paint-stained shirt. She saw the badge still clipped to his chest. She saw a large man at a table that had a reservation on it for 7:45. She also, and this is the thing she would think about later, the thing she came back to, did not see the reserved card, which had slipped under the salt shaker, which she also did not notice. She came around the bar. She touched the server on the arm as she passed and said, "I've got 7. The server nodded and changed direction. She walked to table 7. Before we continue, if you believe that the moment you realize you are wrong is the most important moment, please like this video, subscribe to Stillwater Stories, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today." She had a script for this. She used it occasionally, not often, because table reservations rarely became a situation, but occasionally. It was polite, it was firm, it offered a solution, it moved the person on without making it a confrontation. She had used it 8 or 9 times in 9 years, and it had worked every time. She said, "Hi, I'm Claire. I own the place. I'm sorry to do this, but this table is reserved for 7:45. We've got someone coming in. Can I move you to a spot at the bar, or there's a table opening up by the window in about 10 minutes? Marcus looked up at her. He said, "Oh, I didn't see a sign." She said, "It's there." And she leaned to look, and the card was under the salt shaker, and she said, "It slipped. I'm sorry about that, it's not your fault, but I do need to hold the table. Can I set you up at the bar?" He said, "Sure, no problem." He picked up his jacket. He picked up his phone. He stood up, and she registered. As people always registered when Marcus stood up, the full fact of him. The 6'2" and the broad shoulders and the construction boots. And she registered it the way she registered everything, which was to note it and move on. He said, "Should I just..." He gestured toward the bar. She said, "Yeah, anywhere along there is fine. I'll have Jess come take your order." He said, "All right, thanks." He went to the bar. He sat down. He put his jacket on the stool beside him and his phone on the bar and looked at the menu board again. That was the whole interaction. It had taken 90 seconds. Nobody had raised their voice. Nobody had been rude. Marcus had said no problem, and he had meant it, because it was no problem. He had sat at the wrong table and the owner had told him, and he had moved. That was the whole thing. Garrett arrived at 7:43. He came in with his leather portfolio and his phone, and he went to table 7 and he looked at it, and then he looked around the bar with the expression of a man confirming that the table had been held for him and was now available, which it had been and which it was. He sat down. He put his portfolio on the table. He continued his phone call. Claire brought him a menu. He covered the phone briefly and said, "I'll need a few minutes." She said, "Of course." She went back to the bar. At 7:51, Garrett ended his call and looked around for the server. Jess was at the bar, taking Marcus's order. Garrett waited approximately 30 seconds, which was approximately 25 seconds longer than he typically waited for service. And then he said, at a volume calibrated to carry, "Excuse me?" Jess looked up. She said, "I'll be right with you." He said, "I've been waiting." She said, "One moment, sir." She finished with Marcus, the burger, the fries, a water, and went to table 7. Garrett ordered a gin and tonic and a steak and said, "I requested this table specifically. I'd like to make sure the reservation was correctly noted." She said, "Yes, sir. Table 7, 7:45. He said, "I was here at 7:43. The table wasn't available." She said, "We held it for you, sir." He said, "There was someone at it when I arrived." She said, "We moved them as soon as we saw the conflict." "I apologize for any inconvenience," he said. "Who was sitting here?" She paused. She said, "A customer who sat down by mistake, sir. We moved them right away." He looked toward the bar. Marcus was on his phone, waiting for his food. Garrett looked at him for a moment. The construction clothes, the badge, the paint-stained shirt. And then he looked back at Jess and said, "I see." He said it with a specific quality, a particular shade of "I see." And Jess heard it and said nothing because she was 23. And this was her job, and she had learned when to say nothing. Claire was behind the bar. She had heard the exchange. She had heard the specific quality of "I see." She came around the bar. She said, "Is everything all right?" Garrett said, "Fine. A minor confusion with the reservation. Sorted out now," she said. "Good. Can I get you anything while you wait for your drink?" He said, "Actually, I'm curious." He said it in the tone of someone who is not actually curious but is going to say something anyway. He said, "The person at my table." "Was that a walk-in?" She said, "Yes. Sat down by mistake. The card had slipped under the salt shaker." He said, "I see." He looked toward the bar again. He said, "You moved him fairly quickly." She said, "We try to handle those situations promptly." He said, "I appreciate that." He picked up his portfolio. He said, "These things can get complicated." Claire looked at him. She looked at Marcus at the bar. She looked at Garrett. She said, "What do you mean by complicated?" He said, "Just, situations." He made a small gesture. "People who don't know the rules." She said, "He sat at the wrong table." He moved when I asked. "There was no situation." Garrett said, "Of course." "I just meant," she said, "What did you mean?" He stopped. He looked at her. She was looking at him with the hazel eyes and the practical expression and something else that had arrived in the last 40 seconds and was not going anywhere. He said, "I simply meant that it can be awkward." Asking certain people to move, she said, "Which people?" The bar had gotten slightly quieter. Not dramatically, it was not a film, but slightly. The way a room gets quiet when something is happening at one table that is slightly more interesting than whatever was happening before. Garrett said, "I didn't mean anything by it." She said, "I think you did." He said, "I'm a paying customer who had a reservation." She said, "You did." And that customer, she gestured toward Marcus at the bar, sat down by mistake because my reserved card was under the salt shaker. And when I asked him to move, he said, "No problem," and moved. That's what happened. She paused. "Whatever you meant by certain people and complicated and, I'd like you to say it directly," Garrett said. "I think you're reading too much into a casual comment," she said. "Maybe." She looked at him steadily. "Or maybe the thing I'm reading into is exactly what you meant, and you're now deciding whether to commit to it." He said nothing. She said, "Your steak and your gin and tonic are coming. I hope you enjoy them." She picked up the reserved card from where it had been under the salt shaker and placed it in the center of the table. She went back to the bar. Marcus had heard most of it. The bar was not large. He had been looking at his phone, but he had heard. And he looked up when Claire came back behind the bar. And she looked at him. She said, "Sorry about the table." He said, "You already apologized." She said, "I know. This is a different apology." He looked at her. He said, "You didn't do anything wrong." She said, "I came over to that table pretty fast." He said, "The card was under the salt shaker." She said, "Yeah." She put her hands on the bar. "But I came over pretty fast." He was quiet for a moment. He said, "I know." She said, "I'm sorry." He looked at her for a long moment. The hazel eyes, the green flannel, the scar on her chin, the 9 years of running this room written in the way she stood in it. He said, "You handled it." She said, "Not as fast as I should have," he said. "No, but you handled it," she said. "Your food's almost up." He said, "All right," she said. "The burger and the fries are on the house tonight," he said. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. "All right. Thank you." She went back to the bar. He went back to his phone. Garrett ate his steak at table 7 and did not look toward the bar again. At 8:40 he settled his bill and left. He did not leave a tip. Jess noted this to Claire after he left. Claire said, "Log it." She kept a record of non-tippers, and she reviewed it when reservations came in from the same name. It was not a policy she had ever formalized. It was a policy she had been operating for 7 years. Marcus finished his burger at 8:15. He left a 20 on the bar. The food would have been 16 with the bill. And he had been told it was free, which meant he was leaving a $4 tip on nothing, which he understood was not the math, but which was the amount he had in cash, and which felt like the right thing. He put on his jacket. He unclipped his badge from his shirt and put it in his pocket. He said goodnight to Jess, who said goodnight back. He walked out into the October rain. He did not think about what had happened particularly. It had been a long day, and he was tired, and the burger had been good, and the bar was warm, and someone had done something wrong, and then something right, and that was most days, most bars, most of the life he had been living. He had learned to carry things like this without letting them sit on him, not because they didn't land, but because they landed and he kept walking anyway. Because what else do you do? He walked to the subway. He went home. He took off his boots at the door and sat on the couch for a while before he had the energy to shower. He did not go back to Callaway's for 3 weeks. When he did, it was a Friday and the bar was full, and the only seat available was at the bar itself. He sat down. Jess was working. She recognized him and said, "Hey, welcome back." He said, "Hey." Claire was at the far end of the bar, going through the week's receipts. She looked up when Jess said hey and looked at Marcus and nodded. He nodded back. That was it. That was the whole thing. He ordered the burger and the fries and sat at the bar and ate and went home. He came back the following Friday. And the Friday after that, it became, without either of them deciding it, a thing. Marcus on Friday evenings, the burger and the fries. The bar stool 3 from the left, a nod to Claire when he came in. One Friday in December he came in and the stool was taken and Claire said, from behind the bar, without looking up, "The one at the end is free." He went to the end. She brought him a water without being asked. He said, "You remembered." She said, "It's my bar." He said, "The water." She said, "You always order water first." He was quiet. He said, "How long have you had this place?" She said, 9 years. He said, "You like it?" She thought about it. She said, "Most nights." He said, "What about Tuesday nights?" She looked at him. He was looking at the menu board, not at her. He was almost smiling. Not quite, just almost. She said, "Most Tuesday nights." He said, "Fair enough." She went back to the receipts. He ordered the burger and the fries and sat at the bar, and the bar did what bars do on December Fridays, which is fill up and get warm and make the outside seem like someone else's problem. And that was enough. It was just a bar, a wrong table, a card under a salt shaker, a man who moved when he was asked, and a woman who understood 4 seconds later than she should have what she had been looking at. That was all. Most of the important things are. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Stillwater Stories for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human decisions that turn out to matter more than anyone knew. And tell us in the comments, have you ever realized mid-action that you were wrong about who you were dealing with?